All right, everybody. Hello. Hello, everybody. We are here with our initial webinar, hashtag leading differently. And our webinar will start in just a moment with our special guest today. But before we get started, there's a few things I'd like to comment to the audience. First off, we have both accessible formats here. We have two accessible formats. We have American Sign Language interpreters. You'll hear them speaking into English, as well as a CART reporter. If you wish to see the CART captioning, you can either do one of two options. You can click on the closed captioning in Zoom, and you can view the transcript as it scrolls through, or there's actually a link that will bring you to a separate site, and you'll see the CART captioning there. I would like to thank Interpreter Now for their support today, for the interpreters that we have here, and for the CART services. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you, Interpreter Now.
This will also be recorded and then uploaded to our Innovi Strategies YouTube channel. If you have any questions for Darian based on today's webinar, you can certainly send her a message. This webinar will last approximately 30 minutes, and if there's time left at the end, we will be having a Q&A portion of the webinar. If not, we will be sure to follow up on any questions that may arise. With all of that said, we are ready to get started on today's webinar with Darian Gambrell. So I will go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Shane Feldman. I am the CEO of Innovi Strategies. We are an organization leadership development company. We help companies organize and do strategic development internally. Darian, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much, Shane, for having me here. My name is Darian Gambrell, and I'll include a visual description of myself. I'm wearing a purple V-neck shirt with a silver necklace. I have a short afro and some drop earrings in silver, black, eyeglasses, and I have a gray background with a little bit of my table visible, and I'm standing for this today. Let me say thank you again for having me today. My name sign is Darian, D on the chest, and I'm the executive director for an organization called Deaf Inc. We sign it as Deaf Support. And I've been here for 3 years now, and I'm very excited to share my journey with all of you.
Great. Oh, thank you for reminding me. I'm giving a visual description. Again, my name is Shane. My pronouns are him and his. Wearing a blue shirt with black stripes. I am bald. I have hearing aids, a black beard. I'm in a clean gray background with wooden floor. So we'll get started with the first question. So you were just talking about yourself. You're the executive director for Deaf Inc. If you could talk about the organization, your role in that organization, please.
Sure. So as an executive director for Deaf Inc., I'm always on the lookout for funding. I'm always looking for grants to support our services. We provide services for deaf, deafblind, late deafened adults. So we're always looking to improve adult education, U.S. citizenship, helping people pass the test, driver's education, and tireless advocacy efforts, both for blind and sighted deaf folks. So that's a vast community, and we need a lot of grants to support our staff and all of their work. I do a lot of networking. I work with the board. Our agency does have a board that supports us. And we also have a staff of about 23 people and counting. We're always looking to hire more people. When positions arise, we're always looking to add new folks to our list. So that's what I do. I also go out into the community and meet people out there who are interested in partnering with us and who want to know more about Deaf Inc. I also go to the events that our staff put on. It's always wonderful to go there and meet our clients. Is the best part, is meeting our consumers, sitting down and talking with them. And I learned so much from them about what's happening in their lives and what they'd like to see happen. So that is a really enriching job.
I see you're very passionate about what you do and very motivated about the kind of work that you do and the services you provide. And getting there, you had to start somewhere, right? So would you mind telling us a bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today? Because you've talked about before, the things you've talked about, that journey. And sometimes it's not a traditional journey to get to where you are. So if you wouldn't mind talking about your unique journey to where you are today.
Sure. Well, growing up, we tend to ask everybody, what do you want to do when you're grown up? And I had wanted to go into hospitality, into hotel management. That was my dream, to be in the hoteling business. And that didn't happen. But I've learned over time that it's actually all about customer service, relationship building, and all of that is really what's at the heart of hospitality. And that is probably what got me into this job. But how I got here is truly through a series of blessings. My life journey started at the Kendall School at Gallaudet. And, I already had my basics started there at elementary school. My foundation got started there. And I was with Gallaudet University in a variety of different roles for over 16 years, where I was able to build a wealth of experiences and skills. And I think what was most important was understanding what it was like to be a student, what it was like for me as a person learning ASL later in life, and wanting to really give back to that same community. And Gallaudet gave me that opportunity. After those 16 years at Gallaudet, I felt that it was time for a change. So I moved to North Carolina with this state government there, which was an entirely different experience. Going from higher ed to the government, it was a very different situation, very different experience in terms of the use of language in the environment as well. And I had to do some adapting. And that was a very important skill to have. I think we cannot decide on a certain route or approach in life and stick to it, but instead we really have to be adaptive. I wasn't sure what was going to be next for me, so applying to this position was a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I went for it. And I see, here I am. What I've learned from Gallaudet and from my other jobs has definitely prepared me for this position. I don't have nonprofit management experience, but what I do have is deaf experience. I have customer service experience and a variety of other transferable skills that make me in great standing for this job. And it's been really powerful to be here. Oh, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, thank you. So you've had some mentorship support on that path, right? Mentors that gave you important messages and thoughts that you've incorporated as part of who you are, that have guided your decision making and your strategizing. Could you talk a bit more about that?
Oh, absolutely. I've had a lot of different mentors through my life, starting with my parents. I really have to consider them mentors as well. Even my friends, my former supervisors, so on and so on. But when I got to this position at Deaf Inc., I would say the board really blessed me by providing me with a mentorship experience and the supports that I needed to grow into my leadership journey. So I'm really grateful to them for that. And, in the morning before everybody's awake, 7:30, 8 o'clock, those conversations that we have are so valuable. I'm able to learn what I need to do. I've learned throughout all of my experiences that I have to do research as well. I can't just assume that what is obvious is sufficient. And here in Boston, I'm very blessed to be a part of a variety of organizations that offer free leadership development opportunities like workshops and seminars, especially for BIPOC folks like myself. So for me as a Black deaf woman, I've really tried to make the most of those experiences, and I consider all of those people mentors as well.
Could you talk more about those organizations? Because I know that professional development is a really important part of growing as a leader. I can't just assume that we're going to get there automatically. It's a constant learning journey, right? And you have to be very introspective about that process. So what have those organizations done? What have they provided you with? What tools? Obviously, they've given you confidence. What other things have they given you?
For sure. Well, the first thing is I joined the Institute for Nonprofit Practice, and that was a year-long commitment. Lots of meetings and classes over Zoom, 4 hours at a go, and there was much to learn. But I learned the ins and outs of nonprofit practice, the frustrations that are faced, and sometimes things that we have to wrestle with. All of that, what diversity equity, and inclusion in mind. Those were the frameworks. So there were about 20 of us. Everyone but me was hearing, and I went through all of it with interpretation services. So I felt better as I went on, knowing that I wasn't the only one who was new to this. Of course, I was the only deaf person and signing person in the class, but all these other people were going through a very similar experience, and I felt really supported in knowing that. And then something else I'm really excited about is YW Boston. That's once a month, and I've learned all about Boston's history, their DE&I efforts, their executive directors, all of these different individuals and leaders that have been involved. I've been so impressed to be in a space with all of these individuals that really share the same philosophy. They really want to be a part of the community. They want to do the best for the communities. And so I very much enjoyed that. And now a new one is the Boston Foundation, one of the 6 movement leaders addressing social justice. This is different, however, because we're addressing it from a deaf lens and really talking about how to be a part of social justice in a way that doesn't just focus on race. And again, I am the only deaf person in all 3 of these environments, but I still make the most of what.
We just started listening about your work and your organization that received some fantastic awards to support the work that you do within your organization. So first off, a foundation run by McKinsey Scott was giving grants, and they gave you $2 million to support your work within your organization. But there's another organization that you just mentioned. I believe it was YW Boston. They're supporting your work as well. So I'm curious about that. How does your coming in as a leader, how did you learn about these opportunities to lead such a great organization and get these grants? How did that all work out?
Oh, certainly, yes. Well, thank you for recognizing that. It's still so exciting that we've been awarded this grant. So yes, thank you for that acknowledgement. Again, the Institute of Nonprofit Practice, there were a number of people who in that group who have received these awards as well, which I actually didn't know until later. And they had a call to order, a call to for proposals, and I was encouraged to apply. And to apply for $1 million. That was really kind of something I was tempted to ignore. I felt like that was an impossibility. But as I attended the class, I found that a number of my cohorts had applied and gotten it. And they were told that if your revenue was under 60 million, you should apply. So the next day I told my grant writer, this is what we're going to do. And we started at it. We talked about it with our team, and we found that, in fact, it turned out to be a wonderful experience. And what I've learned from that is sometimes you have to just show up and do it. And it's free to apply. I mean, you have to pay your grant writer, of course. But once you send in your application, you can get an email back that may shock you. Our news was that, in fact, we got 2 million, even though we applied for 1. And it was really partly about being in the right place at the right time. You never know when networking is going to pay off. And that is so important.
Tell me more about the networking. That seems to be a very important part of leadership, because without networking, the opportunities just don't arise, right? You don't have that chance for personal growth or peer support and a myriad of other things. Could you talk to that? Could you give me some real life experience about how networking impacted you as a leader?
Certainly. All I can say is networking is critical for executive directors, really, whatever type of leadership role you're in. I think as a deaf person, I really know what it's like to be tempted to talk to people who I can communicate with in my primary language, who I feel really comfortable with. But I really encourage you to step out of your comfort zone and know that we know as deaf people, we are so often the last to find out about opportunities. Our hearing peers are getting information constantly through each other, the radio, news, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really important for us to access information in the variety of ways it's available to us. I have frequently been surprised to find out things much later than my hearing peers, right? And Right now, the hot topics in our world are equity. Their health equity in particular is really the topic of the day. Funders are paying a lot of attention to that, which means we need to pay attention to that as well, right? I need to know what is the buzzword of the day and make sure that I'm including that in our work. And I don't just mean deaf people, I mean deaf, blind, late deafened, and all of our sectors of our community.
So the whole networking activity helps you understand what the priorities are for funding, what are the available resources out there, and the opportunities that we may have overlooked, right? That we may not be thinking about. So those are the kinds of things that benefit you, right?
Right. And what language to use in your grants. One very valuable piece of advice I got from YW Boston and INP, Institute for Nonprofit Practice, when we talk about our organizations and so on, we need to say that we're deaf-led. We need to say that we're deaf-run and actually repeat it, say it often and not leave it out. That's something that we tend to assume, but funders don't necessarily know that unless we're saying it. And we really need to talk about our lived experience. That is so critical. That word lived experience is such an important point to include. Last Wednesday, I attended another class where they talked about using more examples and more real life stories in our grants. They're such a simple thing to add.
Yeah, you're right. Those are very simple things, but always good to have a reminder from your peers, from people who've already experienced these things. And sometimes we can help remind them, they'll remind us. It becomes more of a team approach, supporting each other through the process. And that's why I think networking is so great in that aspect. So when you talk about leadership, right? So like with today's webinar, it's the topic of today's leadership, the topic of today's webinar. Give us examples of your leadership.
Yeah, certainly. I've had a lot of different experience with other leaders, other managers, and so on. And I always go back to a graduate professor I had who said, leading an organization, becoming a manager in those first 100 days, those are the most critical part of your job. At the time, I didn't quite understand it until I moved into a new position and I really saw for myself. Here at Deaf Inc., I know that I'm leading differently because I've gotten to a place that I'm not from. I'm not from Massachusetts. This was a big move for me. So I'm sure that I was tested at first, to see if I really had a pulse on what's happening in Massachusetts. And I understand that. I'm coming into someone else's space. But through meeting with the staff, meeting with the board, our community partners, our donors, so on and so on, across that first 100 days, that is what I prioritize. I didn't make any big decisions. I just made sure that we were on the right trajectory. We had just come out of COVID when I got into this position. So we really needed to be mindful about the staff's stability and emotions and getting us just into a really good place. So for me, leading differently means listening. Putting the staff first is so important. We need them. The organization cannot survive without our staff. If our staff isn't happy, we're not happy. So we've really got to adjust and meet them halfway. Leading different also means getting yourself out there. You just got to get out there. We couldn't get to this place without the different those different grant awards that we've received and all those other things wouldn't have happened without me getting out there and meeting people and doing something different.
I see two main themes from what you're saying. Great leadership, when you're talking about great leadership. So it's about listening and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, right? Pushing yourself. So if you wouldn't mind expanding on those two concepts. So first off, we're talking about listening, but what can a leader do that really exhibits that you're genuinely listening? How can you make people feel that they are heard, if you will? What does that look like? What kind of techniques do you use or strategies that you use to demonstrate the skill of listening as a leader?
I can give one example. When I first started in this position, I talked with my staff about their experiences in different areas, and they expressed a concern that we weren't focusing enough on the needs of immigrants. that we're continually providing false hope by not providing the services they actually need. And out of maybe 15 people that I'd met with, only one staff member brought my attention to that. So that was something I made sure to keep in mind. And then I heard it again from a few other staff members. So I brought that back to the leadership team and asked if they were surprised to hear this. And they said that they weren't, that in fact, they knew it was a need. And I responded, then why haven't I heard this from you? So this was a really important area that hadn't been attended to. So I went back to that first staff member and thanked them explicitly for saying this to me. And they were so surprised to get this email from me. But to me, it was only fair to really acknowledge that and show that I remember their conversation. And I also try to remember my staff members' birthdays, what's happening with their families. I'm a human too, right? Don't make me out to be something I'm not. I'm a human and I value those human connections. And I think that helps us feel heard and listened to.
Yeah, that just exhibits the importance of listening and demonstrates that we care, that we do listen, and we relate, right? As you said, we're human as well. We have the same goals. We want to make the same progress together. So that's great. And then the second part of that question was talking about leadership and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. So I wanted to ask you about that. A challenge that you face oftentimes, it takes courage to try something new, to put ourselves in situations where we may feel frustration, or we may feel the possibility of success is not clearly there. Could be somewhat of a nebulous situation. So how do you overcome that hesitancy or that anxiety? What does that look like for you as a leader?
Someone once gave me good advice that was give yourself permission to mess up sometimes. And that's right. We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes. And we need to own those and apologize, learn from them, and make sure they don't happen again. I think we have to be comfortable with making mistakes. We're so hard on ourselves and expecting perfection. And even as a Black person, a woman, as a deaf person, I think there's more pressure, but I've been stressing myself out by accepting those pressures. And instead, I'm just saying it is what it is. I've learned. Other people aren't feeling stressed out like that. Why should I? And then I go to meetings and hear people say the same things I'm thinking and feeling, and I realize I need to just let that go. I think that kind of negative thinking is really hurting us, and we need to put that aside, do our best, learn, and then do better. And our staff and our community will appreciate it more if we can admit when we've made a mistake, if we can say, we all make mistakes and that's happened.
Yeah, vulnerability is an important characteristic, right? Sometimes we try, we don't succeed. Sometimes we do, but we have to show both sides. Could you give me an example, one of the more challenging situations that you faced when you came into this position and you were anxious, but found out later on you felt totally different after that situation? Could you give one example of that?
Time when I felt nervous. There's been a few, but I'm trying to think. Maybe my first board meeting at Deaf Inc. would be a good example. I had been through different boards. I'm on a board. I am a board member. But for Deaf Inc., I really wanted to make sure everything went really well. These are my new supervisors. I have 14 pairs of eyes on me, making sure I'm doing things right. So that was pretty nerve-wracking, that first board meeting. But then my staff had prepared some reports, like the financial report or highlights, and they submitted these reports to me. And I felt like, all right, we're in a good place. We're ready to go. And then when I was speaking with the board, they were so excited about where we were going that it put me at ease. I think that's always true for anything that you're doing for the first time. It can be very nerve-wracking. But of course, that board relationship is so important, particularly with the board chair. I think you really need to make sure you're both on the same page.
Yeah, that's a great topic to cover because it's a very common issue for many agencies that are led by a board, right? So I know you just recently changed board chairs. Could you talk a bit more about that? How you support that whole transition process as the executive director, ensuring that the board felt comfortable, that you were building relationships and ensuring consistency right? Those are all challenges for an organization. So your thoughts on that?
Certainly. So the first board chair was the one who met with me as I was going through the interview and hiring process. And that person shortly thereafter decided to leave and focus on their family. And I was taken aback at first, but then reminded myself that it would be okay. And indeed, a new board chair came in who was supervised by the prior board chair to ensure the transition went smoothly. And that transition time is pretty critical. You have to ensure that they're meeting with you. And I think it's been so important to have those relationships so there are no surprises to the board chair. It, of course, comes down to communication. That's so important.
Yeah, and building trust, right? Trust seems to be an integral part of the fabric of any successful organization. So if you could talk a bit more about that whole concept of trust and what that means to you and how to build that with your community, with your staff, and with your board and different peers. How do you build that as a leader?
Certainly, trust to me means follow through. You can't just say you're going to do something and then drop it. It has to truly happen. For example, the immigration issue that we're having, we thereafter applied for a grant particularly to address that. And the trust was there because we followed through on action. We can't just let things linger on the shelf. We have to follow through.
So listening to the story told, leading to prioritization, leads to building trust, leads to getting grants, and the outcome there is an important part of that leadership, right? Showing that you're listening, and then that leads to results. So that just shows the commitment on your part.
Right, that follow through, and on the part of the board as well. Some of them were on committees and wanting to see information in results as well. So critical.
So I see that we just have a few moments left. There might be a few questions. I'm curious, any questions that have come up? We'll ask Davin if we could see if there's any questions.
Okay.
Let me just check the chat really quick. So one of the questions that were asked, how does being deaf help your leadership skills, aside from knowing how to communicate better, of course?
That's a great question. I think I would say we're more observant, right? Our eyes, or for deafblind people, their sense of perception is so acute. We are
Yes.
constantly observing the room, reading the room, observing situations. We can tell who's comfortable or uncomfortable, who's friendly in a room. And I think that that has really helped me a lot. Just being observant, or sometimes when you're listening to a presentation, you're observing how people are responding, who's asking questions, what kind of questions they're asking, who really cares about disability and who doesn't. It says a lot. That's a great question.
I totally agree. It is a great question. Next question for you. Let's see if I can bring this up. Okay, I'm sorry, I misread that. We do have a question here. Considering the vulnerabilities, with our population, high rates of trauma within our population, more so than typical disability communities. There are some challenges with regard to your role as a leader in your space. How do you address those challenges?
I think you'd be surprised at how truly unaware people are about deaf people's needs, about the deaf community's needs. And sometimes that can be very frustrating. And I can really feel myself having to calm myself down in order to explain and recognize that people truly just don't know. And that I'll have to explain it over and over again before they get it. So that is part of our trauma as well. We're already frustrated by accessing the world through interpretation. We're already frustrated by clueless people, and then we're having to educate them. And sometimes we really don't want to, and yet we have to. So I think you just got to get through it and do your self-care at the end.
Follow-up question. Oftentimes, those challenges of educating and explaining the hearing community is how we present ourselves as leaders, right? And it allows people to want to work with us. So how do you balance that out, that internal frustration with trying to get understanding and support of our community? How does that work?
I use my personal story quite often. I try to say, can you imagine yourself growing up as a deaf person? I mean, now we have sign language and access and interpreters, but that's not always been the case. I used to have to sit in the front of the classroom to try to lip read my instructors. And that typically, those kinds of things land really well with people. And then you're able to move on and talk about other things. I think personal story is a great strategy.
Okay, with that said, it's time to wrap up. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today for our conversation with Darian about her experiences, her leadership journey, what it means to be a leader. I will share with you, we will have follow-on webinars coming up like we've had with Darian here. Our next one will be in August and then one in September. We'll be announcing next month's participant. It'll be Andy Prato, who is the Executive Director of Disability Rights California. We'll be talking about his journey as a leader. And also to let you know that our company, NV Strategies, is hosting a Deaf Leader Summit this fall in early November. It's a peer discussion about different kinds of topics to support each other. If you're interested in learning more about that particular conference, please check our website or reach out to us. Again, thank you so much, Darian, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Shane, for providing this space for us. It's so needed. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, everybody.